So, you've heard that martial characters making attacks from range are way worse under the 2024 rules, yeah? You might have even heard that from me. Well, good news. Today, we're gonna build one of those, and depending on the level, it hits harder than anything I've done to date for 2024. Are you as excited as I am? Probably not, but I hope you're still excited. Welcome to D4. Hey everybody, so here at D4, that stands for D&D Deep Dive, by the way, for those who don't know, that's 4 Ds. D4. I like to build characters for my favorite role-playing games. I like to crunch numbers about them, theorycraft about them, not so that I can tell you the right way or the best way to play a character, but to explore one potential way to build something in the hopes of creating a character that's both really fun, but also really powerful to play. So if you also enjoy creating characters for your favorite role-playing games, or if you're just looking for tips or ideas on how to build something you're thinking about playing, or if you just really like theory crafting, then welcome home. This is where you belong, and I am so glad you're here. I really am. So thanks for being here. Thanks for watching. My name's Colby. You know, I kind of have to laugh at myself with the build today. I started off trying to make a dual-wielding hand crossbow character who was probably going to be a paladin, but I kept tweaking it, and the next thing I knew, my quest to create the hardest-hitting ranged character had me making a barbarian, throwing a greatsword. As most of you know, ranged martial characters took a bit of a blow with the 2024 rules, thanks largely to the nerf to the sharpshooter feat, which no longer allows for a -5 to hit, +10 to damage, right? Coupled with the fact that Great Weapon Master got to keep a nice damage increase, and two-weapon fighting got hugely buffed thanks to the Nick Weapon Mastery. So melee users are doing great with ranged characters taking a bit of a hit, and yes, a lot of us are kind of fine with that, considering the other advantages that being a ranged character gives you over melee. And while yes, I know that you can use the Great Weapon Master feat with heavy ranged weapons, it's still a lot less easy to get like bonus action attacks with ranged weapons. You're going to be a lot more mad because you need a 13 strength to get Great Weapon Master, right? There's problems, there's complications. Anyways, none of this is going to stop me from continuing to try and find ways to push the damage envelope, as it were, for ranged martial characters, because that's kind of what I do. And while, yeah, my original plan for today was to build a ranged paladin, something I'm still planning on doing, don't worry, the more I got into it, the more I realized how amazing a ranged barbarian could really be. Now, no, as a strength-based character, that doesn't mean a barbarian with a bow. Sorry if the thumbnail was a bit misleading. I had to get your attention somehow. Don't be mad. But man, are there great things we can do with a barbarian who likes to chuck stuff. I mean, it might not be Baldur's Gate 3 with the overpowered tavern brawler feat, broken, right? Take a drink. But it's really, really good. Before we jump into it, though, I want to talk about something else first. I can't just end the preamble there. That was only like one paragraph. So, throughout the history of this channel, my goal has always been to do builds that I thought most, if not all, of my potential viewers would be able to use at their tables. Obviously, I want these videos to appeal to as wide an audience as possible, and so I've tried to lean towards what I think just about everyone will be able to play with. This means mostly adhering to rules as written interpretations, though I appreciate I bend the rules a little bit here and there sometimes, especially if I think most tables are bending them the same way, right? And also, for the most part, sticking to official WotC material, avoiding not just Unearthed Arcana and third-party stuff most of the time, but also even official WotC stuff that is campaign setting specific, if especially I think that campaign setting specific stuff is a little overpowered. Case in point, I have never done a build that incorporates like Strixhaven backgrounds that give a ton of spells, right? Or Bigby's Giant or Dragonlance backgrounds that give free, pretty powerful, I think, feats. But it might be time for me to adjust that stance. For two reasons. First, with the advent of 2024 changes, backgrounds are a lot more powerful across the board now. Everyone gets a free feat. Those feats are fairly potent. So if I use stuff from Tasha's Cauldron of Everything, why not other books that have content that feels a little more in line with the way everything works in 2024 now? But also, and this is what kind of pushed me over the edge here, I think. A few weeks ago, Chris, Treant Monk, posted a poll on his YouTube page, the results of which kind of blew me away. He asked what content was allowed at his viewers' tables for character creation. And of the like 9,000 or so responses, a healthy sample size, right? Almost 50% said they could use at least up to campaign-specific stuff. And most surprising to me, almost 30% more said they could even use third-party content too. I really would have thought that a lot more people would have said that they could only use core rules, or at most like core and expanded rules. So I decided to do the exact same poll with the same wording on my own site, and lo and behold, at the time of this recording at least, the numbers are almost identical, with even more of you saying you can use campaign stuff, 50%. Together with those who can also use third-party, it is the vast majority of you, almost 80%. Now, I appreciate that what we probably should have included in the poll was wording like, third-party is allowed as long as we clear it with the DM first. A lot of you commented on this. Had I included that wording, I bet we would have seen a lot more than, 28% of people choose that option. What I think that says to me then is that it's probably time to start introducing more campaign setting specific stuff in my builds. It seems to me like for most of you, if it's available on D&D Beyond, it's probably okay to use as long as you clear it with your DM first, of course. So why wouldn't I use that stuff too? If nothing else, it means more toys that I get to play with. So today, for the first time ever, I guess, I'm gonna do some of that to build a giant of a thrown weapon monster. Ready to build it with me? All right, I am proud to present D&D episode number 207, the Throwing Giant, the Tossing Titan, the Ember Flinger, Hurlcules. Oh, that's so good. Big Chuck. This hurl is on fire. They might be throwing giants. Reem Ember the Titans. I think Flaming Hot Yeetos might have been the funniest, but probably the winner. And, thanks to everyone on the Discord server for the suggestions. Man, you guys were just killing it with this one. It's got to go to There's No Race Like Gnome, again, who came up with the BFG, Blade-Flinging Giant. Huge thanks to my good friend Randall Hampton for the fantastic artwork that he put together for the build today. Man, I love what he does. If you'd be interested in checking out the other art that he creates, or potentially reaching out to him to see if you could commission him to create some art for your character, or even your entire party, I will put links in the video description, as always, on how to do so. But first, okay, listen, you guys, I haven't been this excited to talk with you about a new sponsor in a long time. You see, a few years ago, I bought these sweet metal posters behind me, the one of like Gandalf and the Balrog and then, Tiamat here, from a company called Displate. And I thought maybe one day, when I'm all grown up, Displate will actually sponsor a video. Wouldn't that be awesome? Well, my friends, the day has finally arrived. And you know what that means. I got to pick out some new posters that I think that I might just have to kind of swap out what I'm showing behind me every once in a while. So let me show them to you really quick. So for those who don't know, Displate makes metal posters that look, I think, so much better than like your typical paper and canvas. Like this fantastic, original red box D&D basic rules box art, right? Man, I can't tell you how many hours I spent poring over this guy and its accompanying boxes. And I love the way that it looks. It's got kind of a nice matte finish. They have over 2 million works of art available in their catalog, and I can just about guarantee that they've got officially licensed stuff for whatever your favorite nerdy IP may be. Not just D&D, like this awesome silver dragon. Looks so cool. It's like something that you'd find out of like a real like old school kind of bestiary. A little like descriptive text. I love it. But yeah, I mean, you'll find stuff from Lord of the Rings, Star Wars, Marvel, The Witcher, like your favorite Netflix shows, your favorite video games, and more. It's also a great platform for artists that they can use to share and sell their art. The posters come in a variety of sizes. I've been showing you some mediums, but check out these larges. Black Dragon. Oh, spitting acid. That is so freaking cool. One of my favorite things about them is how easy they are to like hang up and take down and like even swap out the posters once you've got like the magnet system mounted on the wall. In fact, let me show you how easy it is. I think I'll keep the color scheme roughly similar. Tiamat, you've had a good run. I'm gonna put the silver dragon in your place for a minute. Gandalf, Balrog, time for you guys to take a break. Yeah. Delivery on these posters is super quick. It takes 4 to 5 business days. And they've also got a new product line called Textra that have this really cool tactile 3D look and feel to them with more saturated colors, like the favorites of the new posters that I got from this recent order. Both from my new favorite TV show of all time, Arcane. Oh, check out Vi. I love her so much. It's probably hard to tell, but like, yeah, there's like a 3D element here and it kind of pops. And I mean, look at how saturated that is. It looks so good. Okay, you ready for the best one? Check this out. Oh, Vi staring down Warwick. This is from season 2, right? Oh my gosh, I love this so much. And the power gloves, these colors kind of pop out from the poster a little bit. So it just kind of has a more kind of tactile 3D look and feel. Oh my gosh, that is so freaking cool. I might be swapping those ones out from time to time too, but they take 2 magnets because they're a little bigger. Anyways, I really love Displate stuff if you can't tell. And I think you guys ought to check them out. In the video description and the pinned comment, click on that, please, if you would, so that they know I sent you. And if you do, and when you check out, if you use the discount code that I have also linked in the video description, the pinned comment, when you check out, you'll save 25% off of an order of 1 or 2 posters, or better yet, 30% off if you order 3 or more. Yay, savings. So, huge thanks to Displate. I have seriously been waiting for years for you guys to notice that I'm already freaking displaying your stuff in my videos. Here's hoping that this isn't the last time you sponsor me. And it probably won't be if some of you guys buy a poster. Hint, hint. All right, thanks. Let's get back to the build. Let me just mention as we begin that yes, while I will be taking stuff from older books for this build, as we go, I'm going to talk a little bit about an alternative Barbarian thrower build that uses 2024 stuff only. It will look quite different tactically, but the damage actually is going to be very similar depending on the level. So don't be dismayed if you're unable to use like campaign setting specific stuff, older stuff at your table. All right, at level 1, for our starting class then, yes, we are starting Barbarian here, and we are going to be mostly Barbarian throughout the build. Barbarians got a ton of love in 2024. I think they still have some scaling issues later especially, but it's not nearly as bad as it used to be under 2014 rules, and they're still one of, if not the best martial classes early on for straight up weaponized damage, right? For our starting species, I think we kind of have to go Goliath for the build today. Probably my favorite species in the new player's handbook, unless Elven Accuracy is on the table, I guess. But yeah, this is as much for the concept of this character as it is for the mechanics. We are building a fire giant yeeter today, and it starts with Goliath, where we get to pick a giant ancestry, and we're going with fire, which tells us that proficiency bonus times per day. When we hit with an attack, we can choose to add a d10 of fire damage, kind of like a mini smite, right? For our background, I'm going to say that yes, for the first time ever, let's dip into some of those previously, I think, overpowered, but not really overpowered anymore backgrounds from specific books. Namely, in our case, from Bigby's Glory of the Giants book, Giant Foundling. Now, this background automatically gives us a free feat, just like origin feats in the new player's handbook do. But since they don't give us ability score assignments for backgrounds, as per the 2024 player's handbook, when taking this background, we'd just choose which ability scores to increase. Or if you can't make a custom background, as per the new Dungeon Master's Guide, then I would go with Guard to grab the Alert origin feat. That should cover all of our bases, I think. Assuming we can get Giant Foundling, though, yeah. This background gives us the Strike of the Giants feat, something I've never used before, and it's pretty awesome. It lets us choose a giant type that we've absorbed primeval magic from and get a proficiency bonus times per day ability to go along with it. I think we've got to take Fire Giant again. It might be weird to do otherwise unless you can come up with a great backstory reason for it, I guess. Anyways, assuming Fire Giant, the feat says that when we hit with a melee or thrown attack, we can, add a d10 of fire damage to the attack. Now, there is a lot of similarity with this feat and the way that the Goliath species works in the new player's handbook, right? It's not exactly the same for each giant type, though it is for fire specifically. It's a d10 of fire damage for our species, proficiency bonus times per day, and it's a d10 of fire damage for this feat, proficiency bonus times per day. As a result, you or your DM may be tempted to not allow them both to be used or stacked, right? If that's the case, again, no big deal. Grab the guard background or something else. But I guess I'd say we're spending a feat for this d10 of fire damage, And we're taking Goliath for our species when we could have taken something else that would have given us other benefits. I don't know why we couldn't just use both here. Sure, stacking them to do 2d10 of damage on a hit, potentially, proficiency bonus times per day, feels like a lot, but honestly, that's barely more than a first level smite, and it is limited to a few times per day. I'm going to assume that we can use them both. For our starting ability scores, then I'm going to assume that we're using the point buy method as always and say let's take a 15 strength plus 2 there, a 15 constitution plus 1, and then a 14 dexterity. As for starting equipment, let's grab some scale mail armor, but for weapons, again, I'm going to present two options here. If you want to commit to thrown weapons right from the get-go on this character, and or if you aren't going to be playing with older 5e content, then grab a hand axe since it does a superior d6 of damage compared to other thrown weapons, right? And then either daggers or light hammers since they both have the Nick weapon mastery. Alternatively, and what we will actually be building around, and this might surprise some of you, but I freaking love it, is to grab a greatsword or maul here and plan on using it. Some of you know where I'm going with this. For everyone else, just hang tight. Personally, I'd take a greatsword over a maul or a great axe because of the weapon mastery for the greatsword. Which, yes, as a Barbarian 1, we get to pick two weapons that we can learn the mastery property of, and Greatsword gives Graze, which says that if we miss an attack with the weapon, anytime we miss, right, we can still do damage equal to our, for us, strength modifier. That's a nice sort of, hey, at least I did something that feels good, right? And actually, it's better the harder the enemy is to hit. The maul has topple, and topple is great for melee, but remember, if we're attacking from range, we have disadvantage on a prone enemy, so that's out. And the great axe's cleave is amazing, but it only works if we make a melee attack. It would be fine for now, but not so great later. If you're wanting to commit to thrown weapons here, just grab the hand axe mastery, right, which has Vex for more advantage opportunities, I guess, that we won't really need probably, but anyways, and the light hammer or dagger, which both have Nick, so you could do the whole two-weapon fighting thing without needing to use your bonus action, right? We also get Rage as a Barbarian 1, that quintessential Barbarian feature that tells us that twice per day for now, and recovering one use of it on a short rest, much appreciated improvement for 2024, we can go into a state of Rage for 10 minutes, so long as we don't don heavy armor, don't become incapacitated, and continue each round to make attacks, force saving throws, or just use a bonus action to keep it going. We can't cast or concentrate on spells while raging. Smiting barbarians have resistance to all bludgeoning, piercing, and slashing damage, and do an extra 2 damage every time we hit with an attack that uses our strength, and we will be doing just that even when we're throwing our weapons. I love Rage. We also get unarmored defense here, which lets our armor class be equal to 10 plus our dexterity plus our constitution modifiers, but until we get higher ability scores or like bracers of defense, we'll be better off with our scale mail and later half plate, right? No naked. Okay, speaking of naked, let me give a shout out to my channel members. You guys are so awesome. I love you. Thank you for all that you do for me, for this channel. I could not do this without you. If you're not a member of the channel, I would love it if you would consider being one. There's a button down there. It says join. Click on it and it'll tell you about all the little perks you can get by being a member, and you get access to all of the perks as long as you're like silver member or higher, which is like $2 a month. I would just ask that you pay what you think it's worth and or what you can afford. But those perks include access to the library of write-ups that I create for each of my builds every week to help you recreate them yourself if you want a little more easily, access to the community Discord server, access to the live monthly Q&A hangout sessions that we do. I love my channel members. They do so much for me, and if you can't or don't want to be one, that's fine. I love you too. Just being here, watching, liking, subscribing, those are also great ways to support the channel, so thanks. At level 2, we get Danger Sense, which gives us advantage on dexterity saving throws, and then the best Barbarian feature of them all, Reckless Attack, which says that when we make our first attack on our turn, we can choose to attack recklessly, giving us advantage on all of our attacks made with strength for the rest of the round, including now, yes, any reaction attacks, at the cost of giving our enemies advantage on their attacks against us. So good. At level 3, we get Primal Knowledge. This new feature is fun and great and maybe a little weird, maybe not. But it says that we get another Barbarian skill proficiency, and then while we're raging, we can use our strength for an acrobatics, intimidation, perception, stealth, or survival check, channeling our primal instincts. Some solid utility there. And then we get our Barbarian subclass, and in case you hadn't guessed yet, yes, we are going with the path of the giant for the build today. It is as it is the most fitting thematically and brings a boatload of power that we're going to be building for. If you can't or don't want to use older content, campaign-specific content, then I would take Berserker here, committing to the 2-weapon fighting style, and you'll be great. In fact, until level 6, you'll actually be doing a little more damage as a Berserker, and after that, it's close, so bully for you. As a Giant Barbarian, though, we get 2 features. Giant's Power says that we learn the Giant Language, or another one if we already know that, and then we can learn the Druidcraft or Thaumaturgy cantrip. Cool. And then Giant's Havoc, which says that when we rage, we can simultaneously grow to large size, which is particularly handy for grappling if we wanted to do that, or just, taking up more space and potentially being able to hit more enemies if we wanted. We're also told here that we can add our range damage to thrown weapon attacks, but remember, in 2024, range was changed to just allow that all the time, so long as we're using strength for the attack, right? So there's a bit of a nothing benefit if we're using the 2024 rules. Don't forget, we do get our 3rd rage per day now, and continue to recover 1 on a short rest. At level 4, we get our first feat, and there are a lot of options to discuss. First of all, if you're committing to the 2-weapon fighting thrown weapon thing, go for dual wielder here. It would let you make yet another attack with your bonus action if you're using a nick weapon for one of your attacks, right? I'm not going to get into the mechanics of all of this. I think there are still some people out there who want to argue that that's not how this should work. I'll stick with what Jeremy Crawford has said about it and say, yes, if you're dual wielding light weapons and one of them has the nick mastery and you have weapon mastery with it, right? Then with this feat at this level, you'd get 2 attacks with your action and 1 with your bonus action. And then the next level, when we get extra attack, it would be 4 attacks total. And that's really strong. Another alternative to consider here is the Ember of the Fire Giant, also from the Big B's book. This has a prerequisite of having the Strike of the Giant's origin feat, right, which I assume we have. And then with this, it would increase our strength by 1, give us fire resistance, which would be nice, and then let us replace one of our attacks on our turn with a 15-foot radius sphere burst of fire damage that blinds enemies. It's cool. If you want it, get it. It doesn't really do much for our single target damage that I'm kind of trying to build the character around here, so I'm going to ignore it. Could be great on a cleave build for sure. But no, what I want, as you may have guessed, is Great Weapon Master. Are you sure this is a thrown weapon build? Yes, it is. Hang on. Right, so with Great Weapon Master, remember, we no longer get -5 to hit, +10 to damage with heavy weapons. Instead, we just get to add our proficiency bonus in damage when we hit with heavy weapons. Any heavy weapon, even ranged ones, right? But the extra damage only applies to hits we make with our attack action, not bonus action. We do still get the if you kill or crit an enemy, you can make another attack with a bonus action thing, though even then we won't get the extra proficiency bonus damage, which is lame. Oh, and yes, it is now a half feat, so we've got an 18 strength. At level 5, we get fast movement, which gives us an extra 10 feet of speed if we're not wearing heavy armor. That's awesome. And then, yeah, extra attack, which gives us 2 attacks when we take the attack action. But it all comes together finally at level 6, because as a Giant Barbarian, that means we get the Elemental Cleaver feature, which says that when we rage, we can infuse 1 weapon with fire, acid, cold, lightning, or thunder. I think we'd pick fire unless we've got a good reason for doing otherwise. And thereafter, attacks landed with that weapon do an extra d6 of damage of that damage type every hit. So nice. Best of all, for us, that weapon, no matter the weapon type, gains the thrown property, and when we throw it, it automatically returns to our hand immediately after the attack, whether we hit or miss. Boomerang, greatsword, engage. Oh, and we can even change the bonus damage with a bonus action later if need be. That's nice if we run into enemies with, fire resistance or immunity. Let's go, giant throwing a huge flaming sword. Let's go. And this is all just in time for our first damage report at level 6. Nice. Okay, so as with most barbarians, combat is pretty straightforward for us. On round 1, we are raging with our bonus action, growing big if we want, and lighting our sword on fire, then making 2 attacks with our greatsword with reckless attack turned on. We can throw it if we want to, but we don't actually get any benefit from doing so yet, other than the benefit of being able to make the attack from range, which isn't nothing. We can throw it from 20 feet away as normal and up to 60 feet away with disadvantage, right? That's the long range. Both attacks would add 2d6 for the weapon, 1d6 for Elemental Cleaver, 2 for Rage, 4 for our Strength modifier, and 3 from Great Weapon Master. Plus, if we miss, we just do 4 damage from our Strength modifier, right? Thanks to the Grey's Weapon Mastery. Also, 3 times per encounter. We could, if we wanted, add 2d10 to an attack that hits. thanks to our Goliath species feature and our Giant Strike feat, for a total, if both attacks landed, of 6d6 plus 2d10 plus 18 damage. Now, if we were going the hand axe and dagger or light hammer route, assuming we took the dual wielder feat, we'd be making 4 attacks. And while only 2 of them would be adding our strength modifier to the damage, 3 of them would get the elemental cleaver damage. We can only infuse 1 weapon, right? So we wouldn't infuse the offhand like dagger or light hammer. But all 4 would add our rage damage. Altogether, that build is doing 1d4 plus 66 plus 2d10 plus 16 damage. So it's actually 0.5 more damage on average if everything hits. Though round 1 is slightly less since we're using our bonus action to rage and aren't getting 4 attacks per turn until we've got our bonus action free, right? You with me? But assuming that we're going the Greatsword route with Great Weapon Master, against enemies with a 10 armor class, averaged over 4 rounds, we would on average do 50 damage per round. And against a 15 AC, it would be 46 DPR. And I mean, this is the first time in any 2024 DPR build that we've broken the 50 mark at level 6. That's kind of amazing. So yeah, compared to other DPR builds that I've done to date, that's pretty much beating out everything. And yeah, compared to other ranged damage dealers that I've done so far, it's just destroying everything, right? And that's awesome. And you gotta just love a Barbarian for having no real setup or anything here, aside from rage on round 1. We just rage and hit stuff. Simple, to the point, very effective. The bummer here is that we're not really getting any additional damage from throwing that massive flaming greatsword. This is basically a melee build that can throw their weapon if they want. And as cool as that is, I think we need to do something to change that. And that something involves taking some fighter levels at level 7. We'd be a fighter 1. We'll get back to Barbarian again, don't worry, but a few levels of fighter gives us so much, as it so often does. First up, we get 3 more weapon masteries, and I'll just say PYF here, pick your favorites. It will depend more probably on what kind of magic weapons are showing up in your game than anything, I think. But then we get a fighting style, which Barbarians sadly never get. They're too brutish. Not disciplined enough, I think. But now we're honing our martial discipline. The thrown weapon fighting style just says that when you hit with a ranged attack roll using a weapon that has the thrown property, and make no mistake, elemental cleaver very specifically gives our weapon the thrown property, even if it's a greatsword. Then in that case, we simply gain +2 damage when we hit. This of course is even more potent if we're making lots of attacks, but yeah, it's a nice little bump here. And it will get even better, don't worry. But we also get second wind here, which says that, twice per day and recovering 1 use on a short rest. We can, with the bonus action, heal ourselves for a d10 plus our fighter level. Nice. At level 8, we would be a fighter 2, and that means we get action surge, so that once per short rest, we can get a second action on our turn, which gives us some nice burst damage capability. And then we also get the new tactical mind ability, which lets us use a charge of our second wind to instead add a d10 to a failed ability check, only using the charge if the added d10 causes the failure to become a success. We've got some solid utility on this character now. It's pretty nice. But at level 9, Fighter 3, this is what I'm most excited about, because that is when we get our fighter subclass. And as much as I'd love to go Psy Warrior or actually Rune Knight or just something different here, I gotta go Battle Master, because Battle Masters get the combat superiority feature, which gives us 4 superiority dice per short rest to use on 3 maneuvers of our choice that can enhance our attacks. And you know which one I'm taking that's just freaking awesome? Quick Toss. Hang on a minute, you might be saying. Quick Toss isn't in the new player's handbook. We can't use it. Okay, remember in the Cool Whip build a few weeks ago how I talked about using old Eldritch invocations from Xanathar's Guide to Everything, like Lance of Lethargy? Sure, the invocation doesn't show up in the 2024 player's handbook, but that doesn't mean that if you're able to use content from older 5e source books, you can't use it, right? Lance of Lethargy wasn't in the original player's handbook for Warlocks either, and WotC's stated intent is that if it didn't get updated for the new player's handbook, it's free to use. For 2024, they didn't see fit to update a lot of Warlock invocations that were added in Xanathar's, right? After the 2014 player's handbook came out. But that should mean that if you can use content from, Xanathar's at your table, those invocations should be available. Quick Toss is pretty much the exact same thing. It's not in the 2024 Player's Handbook, but neither is it in the 2014 Player's Handbook. It was a new maneuver option given to us in Tasha's Cauldron of Everything back in 2020, along with the ambush maneuver, bait and switch, brace, and others. So WotC didn't see fit to update most of those maneuvers for the new Player's Handbook, but that doesn't mean that they're not available at tables that can use content from older 5e books, which is most of you. As Chris, Treant Monk, said in a conversation that we were having about this very thing recently, quote, sorry Chris, I didn't get your permission to quote you here, I hope you're okay with that. I think it would be a hard case to make that Booming Blade is okay, but Quick Toss is not. Yeah, I pulled out the Treant Monk said it was okay card. Sue me. And so, if Quick Toss is on the menu, well, that's incredible, because it says that with a bonus action, we can spend a superiority die to make an attack with a weapon that has the thrown property. Giddy up. We add the superiority die and damage if we hit, and we laugh maniacally as we make yet another flaming greatsword turned meteor attack on our turn. And though we won't be adding extra damage from Great Weapon Master to it, right, since it's a bonus action attack, we will get to add that D8 superiority die, so it's essentially the same amount of damage. So delightful. And just in time for our next damage report. Since last check, we've done some nice things for our damage here. +2 to each attack thanks to the thrown weapon fighting style. Action surge for a couple more attacks once per combat encounter. I'll just assume we're using that on round 1. And then quick toss to give us a third attack with our flaming greatsword when we have our bonus action available. Also, I'll assume that we're adding a superiority die of damage to the first attack that hits on round 1. I'm just going to assume that we've got something like menacing attack maneuver, right, to make use of, since we can't quick toss with our bonus action that round, we had to rage, right? And then since our proficiency bonus is 4 now, I'll assume that we're getting to add that 2d10 of fire damage as our giant selves on every round now, though of course keeping in mind that these numbers are a bit inflated if you're having multiple combat encounters per day, which a fair number of us do, if not necessarily every adventuring day, then at least once in a while, right? So little grain of salt there. Averaged over a 4-round combat encounter, we would, against an enemy with a 10 armor class, do 90 damage per round. And against a 16 AC, it would be 83 DPR. And yeah, what the crap. Since last check, we've just increased the gap between ourselves and other 2024 builds to date, keeping us still right at the top of the pile. So, yikes. Now, to be fair, we don't bring a lot more than damage with us here. A little utility, sure, some tankiness, but I guess like most barbarians, we're kind of just here to hit stuff. And thankfully, we hit like a truck. And also, I am not apologizing for this. Like, characters who only focus on damage and who really are only good at doing damage should do the best damage. Sorry, not sorry. The question I have is, can we keep this up? Barbarians notoriously don't scale amazingly well, better now than in 2014, but still. At level 10, because yeah, at level 10, I think we go back to Barbarian, making us a Barbarian 7 and getting us a Feral Instinct, which gives us advantage on initiative rolls, so very welcome. And also the new Instinctive Pounce, which says that as part of our bonus action that we take to rage, we can move up to half our speed. That's great for melee especially, but keep in mind we've only got a 20-foot range on our thrown greatsword, right, if we don't want disadvantage. So this will help us get in range often as well. At level 11, we would be a Barbarian 8, and that means we get another feat, and I'm just going to say let's bump our strength, cap it at 20. That's going to help our damage more than anything, but also now, especially, a lot of ability checks too, thanks to Primal Knowledge, right? At level 12, we would be a Barbarian 9, and that means we get Brutal Strike. The new Brutal Strike, it says that if we're using Reckless Attack, we can forego advantage on one strength-based attack roll, so long as it doesn't have disadvantage, right? And if that attack still hits, the enemy will take yet another d10 of damage and can either then be pushed 15 feet away from us, and then also we can move half our speed towards them without provoking opportunity attacks if we wanted, but we probably wouldn't most of the time, right? We're attacking from range. Or we could, if Brutal Strike lands, reduce their speed by 15 feet until our next turn. I love both of these things. If an enemy is all up in our business, but we want to throw our weapon at them to get the extra damage from thrown weapon fighting style, then we can push them away first and then start chucking, right? Or if we're already at range and we'd like to stay there, then we can slow them down to make it harder for them to kind of get all up in our business. I hate that we have to give up advantage on the attack for this to work, though. I will admit that. I feel like, as a result, I wouldn't use it all that often in game. I mean, at this level, giving up advantage to get an extra D10 of damage from Brutal Strike does less damage on average just at an enemy AC of 15 or higher. And we're level 12. How often are you fighting enemies with an AC lower than 15 at level 12? It happens, but it's sort of the exception, right? At least it is at my table. Now, sure, we might have a +1 or +2 to hit on a magic sword, in which case that number might be 16 or 17 AC, but still. It just feels like most of the time I wouldn't use Brutal Strike unless I just really needed to push or slow an enemy for some reason. And that's too bad, I think. I will indicate in the spreadsheet, like in yellow, at what armor class we should plan on turning this feature off. And yeah, for those who don't know, I always make a spreadsheet for the build, and I have a spreadsheet that compares all of my builds to each other. Check it out in the video description. Don't forget, at this level, Rage does bump up to 3 damage per hit. Talk about some scaling. Alright, at level 13, we would be a Barbarian 10, and that means we get the Mighty Impel feature as a giant Barbarian. And I mean, this feature is a ton of fun and potentially hilarious and awesome, but again, I think we're probably using it more for utility than we are for damage. It says that as a bonus action, while raging, we can toss a medium-sized creature or smaller. I cannot jump the distance, you have to toss me! We can throw them 30 feet to an unoccupied space that we can see within 30 feet of ourselves. Now, if they're willing, fine, no problem, toss a friend to get on a ledge or over a cliff or just to get help, right? If, however, they are an unwilling toss-e, they get to make a strength save, and as appealing as throwing an enemy 30 feet into the air, which you could do so that they would then just fall and take 3d6 damage and land prone, as appealing as that is, we are just gonna do more damage tossing our flaming greatsword at their face with a bonus action than we will tossing them, right? Plus, there's the size restriction and the saving throw. It'll be fun and useful and funny when you need it. Throwing a bad guy off a cliff is pretty much always a great idea, but I won't assume that we're using it in combat or anything. At level 13, it's time for our next damage report, and you may have noticed that we haven't done a ton to really increase our damage since last check. A little more rage damage, yes, we bumped our strength modifier by 1. Brutal Strike gives a small bump against low AC, but otherwise we've mostly gained some nice utility and defensive benefits, which aren't bad. But as for our average damage over a 4-round combat encounter, against a 10 armor class, we would do 103 DPR, and versus a 17 AC, it would be 94 DPR. And I mean, yeah, we broke the century mark at level 13, against easy to hit targets at least. And that's awesome. But yes, compared to other sustained damage builds that I've done to date, we have slipped a bit. Still in the upper half of tier 1, but getting beat out by, well, the Conjure Minor Elemental users and even the new Blade Lock build. So still amazing, but slipping. No big deal. We've got this. Let's end strong here. At level 14, we would be a Barbarian 11, and that gives us Relentless Rage, which says that if you drop to 0 hit points while raging and aren't just killed outright from taking massive damage, right, then you can make a DC 10 Constitution save, and if you succeed, you instead get a number of hit points equal to twice your Barbarian level. That's great. That should hopefully let us survive at least one more hit, especially if we have resistance to the damage, right? We can continue to make this save every time we drop to 0, but the DC does increase by 5 every time, right, that we have to make the check until we take a rest. It's a nice little survivability tool. At level 15, we would be a Barbarian 12. That means we get another feat, and I think I'm probably looking to shore up my defenses by either bumping Constitution, maybe taking the tough feat, or maybe better yet, getting Resilient Wisdom so that we can have a better shot at not getting mind controlled and things. Considering that we have advantage on dexterity saves, and we already have Constitution saving throw proficiency and a decent con, that would make us pretty good at saving against the most important saving throws anyways. At level 16, we would be a Barbarian 13, and that means we get improved Brutal Strike, which just gives us some more ways to use Brutal Strike if we hit with it. Now we can apply Staggering Blow to give them disadvantage on the next saving throw they make. That's potentially super potent depending on what you're trying to get them to save against, right? This also keeps them from making opportunity attacks until your next turn. Or there's Sundering Blow, which says that the next attack made by another creature, not you, against them has a +5 bonus to hit. That's nice. I'll again only assume that we're using this against easy to hit enemies. But then finally for us, at level 17, we would be a Barbarian 14, and that means we get, as a giant barbarian, Demiurgic Colossus, which has to be the best name of any subclass feature ever. But this says that now, when we rage, our reach increases by 10 feet. It's nice if we weren't already attacking from 20 feet away. But then we can increase our size to huge if we want. That's fantastic for grappling especially, which we're not built for, but it is an option. And we can toss creatures that are large or smaller potentially. Finally, the extra damage that we do with each hit of our elemental cleaver weapon jumps to 2d6 on a hit. Finally, some damage. Yay. And this then brings us to our final damage report. Since last check, yeah, the only thing we really got to increase our damage is that extra d6 per hit. We picked up some nice utility, some nice survivability, even debuffing options, but as usual for barbarians and some other classes, the damage scaling has slowed way down. But over a 4-round combat encounter on average against enemies with a 10 armor class, we would do 118 damage per round, and against an 18 AC, it would be 107 DPR. And while that does give us about a 10% increase or so since last check, compared to other sustained damage builds to date, that's kind of more like middle of tier 1 now. Still a fantastic place to be. But yeah, the hardest hitters have a pretty healthy margin on us at this point. And not just the cheating, the cheater face Conjure Minor Elemental builds either, though, yeah, those ones are like double our damage at this level. So, okay. What does it all mean? Let's talk about it in the final thoughts here. The tier score for this build, if you take the damage they do at all of the armor classes, at each of the 4 damage reports, and just average it into one big number, we end up with a 78, which, yeah, puts us very near the top of tier 1, underneath only the new Blade Singer and Valor Bards using Conjure Minor Elementals, and then the new Blade Lock. Man, that build is proving pretty hard to beat without cheating. Kinda love it. But not as much as I love this build. Jeez. Hurling flaming greatswords for insane damage. And especially at tier 1 and tier 2, they are destroying everything. And I mean, that's when most of us are playing most of our D&D, right? So you could argue that this is like the new frontrunner for dealing damage for most campaigns at most tables. And they are a ranged weapon user. Well, not really. They are a martial character making attacks from range, and that's not exactly the same thing, is it, of course? Now, some of you may be thinking that this build is a perfect example of why we shouldn't be allowed to mix old 5e 2014 content with new 2024 content, especially if we're talking about like campaign setting specific stuff, because it's just too strong. Power creep has entered 5e, and we shouldn't allow the best stuff from 2024 to mix with the best stuff from 2014, or it's just too good. I think I'd take issue with that, honestly. I mean, first of all, if you look at the 170 or so builds that I did using just 2014 rules over the years, well, there are still quite a few of them that are beating out this one at most tiers of play. The only exception to that is the level 9 damage report. But even then, it's very close with some of them, like the old Bladesinger 2.0, Hexblade 2.0, the Kraken. Man, the Kraken. That was good, right? And you guys, Monster Week is coming back. We're not doing Krakens this time, we're doing Dragons. And it's happening next month, so stay tuned. I've already got my build laid out a little bit, and I can't wait. Anyways, yeah, just straight 2014 stuff is outpacing this build sometimes, and frankly, straight 2024 stuff is outpacing it sometimes as well. Not just the Conjure Minor Elemental users, though those are the most egregious, but yeah, the straight Blade Lock and others are kind of neck and neck at times. So while, yes, combining old stuff with new stuff has potential for a lot of power, it's not like it just is destroying everything that sticks to like one or the other rule sets, and so should be banned, in my opinion. The one kind of frustration that I have with the build, though, is, yeah, just continued evidence at the superior scaling power of spellcasters. I'm not going to beat that dead horse too much, but it makes me a little sad that Wizards of the Coast is so afraid to give pure martials some serious damage scaling into late game. I guess the counter argument might be that magic weapons start to make up for that lack of scaling at those higher tiers of play. Man, wouldn't I love a Flame Tongue Greatsword on this character, right? For damage and thematic purposes. But I mean, to that argument, I think I would just say, Gishes benefit just as much from magic weapons, and their spells will continue to put them over the top, you know? Not that I'm complaining about that, necessarily. In the end, though, regardless of the kind of relative lack of scaling, man, this build just destroys. I don't know if I'll be able to come up with a pure martial that hits harder, especially not from range. And all that giant fiery flavor, coupled with the fantastic survivability that comes from being almost all barbarian and a healthy heaping of utility now to boot, put this flaming hot Yito at the top of your to play list. I think you'll have a blast. So I hope you enjoyed the build. Man, I had a lot of fun putting this one together. I hope you know that I love you. I do. You guys, thank you so much for all that you do for me and for this channel. It means so much to me, and I hope that you'll have a really great day today and a fantastic week, and if you don't, I sure hope that you will hang in there and not give up, please. I hope that you will do good and be kind, and that I see you again very, very soon. But until then, take care. Bye. At night I wake up with the sheets soaking wet and a freight train running through the middle of my head, and you cool my desire. Oh, I'm on fire. Ooh, 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 ooh. I had to come up with a good fire-themed song for the build today, right? And there's too many to choose from. This girl is on fire. Hurl. This hurl is on fire. That was a potential name for the build, right? It's a good one. We didn't start the fire. It was always burning since the world's been turning. I don't know. Too many to choose from. So I had to go with an old favorite. I had to go with the boss, because he's just the best. Oh, it is springtime. Had to get on my springiest t-shirt and put a baby blue robin egg background, because I'm feeling it. I got the fever. I'm ready to go hiking and biking and just I love the spring. It's when my birthday is happening. We got spring break coming up. With the hopes of crap, I just realized that I forgot to add the graze damage. Shoot. That's complicated. Okay. Pause. All right. 30 minutes later, I recrunch the numbers to add essentially 1 or 2 damage. Personally, it would bark like a dog. Anyways, yeah, it's almost exactly the same. But assuming that we're going But on average,